Now that you have successfully cast, we need to clean them up. So your objects are always going to have a sprue attached to them somewhere, right? Maybe there's multiple sprues. So hopefully you thought about the placement of that sprue and you put it somewhere that's going to be easy to clean up. Now to cut the sprue off, we can use our jeweler's saw, or we can use our sprue cutter. To use the sprue cutter, it's really easy. So with this particular piece here, it's a triangular piece that comes down to a point. That sprue goes over part of the piece. So I would want to cut away from the piece and be able to file that and blend that form back to the shape that it's supposed to be in. So to use the sprue cutter, it's just like a pair of bolt cutters, and you just squeeze down over that sprue and your piece of metal gets cut off. Obviously, to use the saw, you just use your saw. It's pretty basic. Okay, so I have already cut the sprue off of this ring. Now I'm left with this nub, with this bump. I also don't have the nicest surface on this ring. Now this ring is designed to just be a smooth ring, so I'm going to end up filing the entire thing. If you have a lot of texture, you want to avoid filing that area that's heavily textured because you're going to file that texture away. The files, the sandpaper makes everything smooth. So if you don't want it to be smooth, then do not file that particular area. Now the ring is a small object, so I am going to use my ring clamp. Basically, the ring clamp allows me to hold on to small things without too much stress on my hands. I'm going to use this big file . Now typically when I'm doing this demonstration in a class, I don't do it like a cooking show where I go through all of the steps of sanding and filing so that you guys don't see that it's some sort of a magic process that just happens. Filing and cleanup is work. You need to spend the time and do it right. If your surface isn't refined, it doesn't matter how intricate the piece is. You know, it's like building $1 million home and then hiring Save a Buck Painting to come in and paint it. They're going to do a terrible job. So you want to do an effective job cleaning up, because that's the first thing that we notice. For this video, I'm probably going to do some edits, and I'm going to try to mention when those edits are going to happen. If you can, when you are filing, always work against the bench. The bench is going to be a lot of resistance. It's going to be a good stable surface to work against. Don't work out here. You're being your own resistance, and you're going to be working a lot harder. Okay, so this very aggressive big file made real quick work of that bump. That bump is gone. I don't want to keep using this really aggressive file because it's putting really big marks in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to the more aggressive file that's in my bench. Okay, so I have filed this entire surface of the top half of this ring. The bottom half of the ring is still in the ring clamp, so I'm going to have to take it out and reposition. What I want you to notice is this large pile of filings, okay? And so since we skipped ahead, you know, I've been filing for quite a bit, and I end up with, you should have this really nice big pile of filings. That means you're working efficiently. Also, when I'm filing, I'm making sure to follow the profile of my ring I don't want to file all these flat spots in there. I want to try to keep this nice and round and smooth because this is supposed to be a round ring. Okay, so I've successfully done the whole outside. Looks like there's a dull spot right here. You really want to scrutinize your entire surface, and you want to hit everything that you need to hit with the more aggressive tool. So the file is going to take a lot of material away. Then we use our most aggressive sandpaper to get rid of the file marks. Then we go to our next size up to get rid of the aggressive sandpaper marks, and so on and so forth. So if you don't do an effective job, if I had left this little spot right here, I'm gonna have to work a lot harder with the sandpaper, and it's not gonna be as effective. So you wanna make sure that you're doing a complete job with each step. Now I need to file the inside. Okay, so after quite a bit of filing on the inside, quite a bit of filing on the outside, I am ready to start working with the sandpaper. Now I have these sanding sticks, and basically what the sanding stick is my sandpaper wrapped around a piece of wood, and it makes your sanding a lot more efficient this way. Basically turns your sandpaper into a little file. So I'm gonna sweep up first and then get to work. I've been sanding this for a little while. I have a big pile of kind of sooty sand on my bench here, and I've gone over this bottom half of the ring quite a bit. Now what I'm doing is if I pass it back and forth in the light like this, I'll be able to see if there's any more file marks, and I can see when I pass it back and forth, there's some file marks right here. There's a file mark up here, and there's a couple pits in this ring. Now pits are kind of errors or mistakes in the cast. It could have been that there was a chunk of dirt or some sort of impurity, or I could have maybe overheated my metal slightly and it was boiling a little bit. One or two pits is not going to be a big deal, but if the thing is riddled with pits and they go the whole way through it, it could be a problem. Great thing about the sanding stick is when that piece of sandpaper is worn out, you just peel it away. Don't continue to work with worn out sandpaper. It loses its grit. So you want to be continually repositioning your piece in the ring clamp. You'll notice, especially if I'm sanding on the outside of a ring, that you can access certain areas in certain positions. So sometimes you need to move the ring so that you can access other areas. And so be constantly repositioning that ring within the ring clamp. Now I've been sanding for a long time, and I have this big pile, expect to have green fingers, and I am pretty confident that I've taken care of all those file marks. Oh, I see some right here. And normally it takes that much time to address it. I get really frustrated when I see people try to skip steps, or they don't go back and address that scratch and they try to polish it out. Trying to polish it out is going to make it look 100 times worse, because all you're doing is polishing the metal around that scratch. Take a step back, get the more aggressive sandpaper, and do an effective job. Most of the time, the difference between something looking completely finished and something looking completely unfinished is such a small amount of effort. You know, you've gotten it this far, just finish the job. Okay, so my next grit up after my aggressive sandpaper. Now, if you do a good job with each layer of sandpaper, the next layer is going to be that much easier, because the aggressive sandpaper did all the work. And so, since the aggressive sandpaper did all the work, you're merely getting rid of those aggressive sandpaper marks. Now that it appears that I have gone over the entire thing with my 320 grit sandpaper, I'm going to use 400 grit, but I'm taking the 400 grit and I'm not using the sanding stick. The reason why is I want my finger to follow the profile of the ring. I don't want those flat spots that I was having to work with before. So, and if you tear little squares, or sort of squares, off your big sheet of sandpaper, you're going to end up using more of it. If you try to use the whole sheet of sandpaper at once, it's really awkward, and you're not going to utilize that entire sheet of sandpaper. And now I just noticed some scratches that are deep in the surface. So basically what that means is I need to take a couple steps back and go to my more aggressive sandpaper. So I have my 320 right here. I'm going to hit that spot with a 320, and hopefully I can get those scratches out. If I can't get them out with the 320, I need to step down even farther, go with 220, so on and so forth. And that looks pretty good. Back to my 400. Okay, that was one side. Okay, so my ring is now completely covered with 400 grit marks. I could, at this point, go down and polish. This is the polishing wheel. Or I could continue. I have some 600 grit sandpaper. That would be the next step, and so on and so forth. And so I'm down here at our polishing wheels. Now, in any metalsmithing studio, this is actually probably one of the most dangerous tools that you will use. More people get hurt on this tool than any other tool for some reason. There are some serious safety concerns with this particular tool. Number one, always wear eye protection. Number two, no dangly anything, okay? No loose jewelry, neckties, headphones with cords, none of that is down here. Pull your hair back. Where I went to graduate school, there was a picture of a person who had a bald spot because she had a big chunk of hair ripped out and it does not grow back. So, the way this tool works is we're going to put a polishing wheel on this spindle. Hold the spindle and turn the wheel, or hold the wheel and turn the spindle towards you. Okay? Or you can spin the wheel backwards. What we're going to do is we're going to load up compound when we turn this on. So each different compound is contained in its own box. We need to keep these separate. We don't want the compounds mixing, because if the coarse compound gets introduced to one of the finer ones, it basically contaminates that wheel, and we can never use that wheel for that finer compound again. Bobbing is going to be the first compound that you use. It's number one. It's kind of a yellowish compound. Next would be Tripoli, which is kind of an orangish compound. Then we have white diamond, which is obviously white. And then rouge. Rouge is our finest. If you want a super mirror polish on something, you would work all the way up to rouge. You need to wash your work between each step because you don't want any residual compound to be introduced to those next wheels. When we are working, and to take this off, I'm just going to hold the spindle and spin the wheel towards me. When we are working on the polishing wheel, we want to work between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock. That way things are just gently tugging away from us. And if we lose our grip, it just ends up down here in the little catch pan. One thing I didn't mention, never ever polish a chain because it's gonna get caught and then start whipping around. So that's another bad thing. You never want to work up between noon and 3 because then it's pushing the work towards you, and I don't know why anybody would think to reach their hands behind them. So, eye protection or face shield, no loose anything, no large cumbersome objects. You really don't want to polish a large object because it's going to highlight any of the defects in that surface. I really don't recommend it. And then never polish a chain. No dangly anything anywhere near you. Okay? Okay, so I'm down here at the buffing wheels, and you may have noticed that I didn't sand any of the inside of this ring. I could have taken my sandpaper and wrapped a piece of, or taken my file and wrapped a piece of sandpaper around it and sand it. But instead, I'm going to use this. This is a split mandrel. Goes on the buffing wheel. And I'm going to take a piece of sandpaper, once again starting with 220. I'm going to take a piece of sandpaper, slip that in the split mandrel, and I'm going to wind it up. Now that it's wound up, I can turn on and I can use this to sand Okay, I'm ready for the next grit up. Okay, so I was able to successfully go through all those grits. And now I have the inside and the outside of my ring sanded. I noticed now that I'm down here in the other light, I have some more scratches that I need to deal with. And so I'm gonna take care of those now. I don't wanna go ahead and start polishing because it's futile. There's some scratches right here, some scratches over here. Now I'm ready to polish. So the polish works a lot like the sandpaper. We have different grits of polish. The first one is bobbing. We keep all of the polish separated into these nice little Tupperware containers. Inside, we have all kinds of different wheels. We have kind of firm wheels, really soft wheels. I'm gonna go with this soft wheel. And then we also have wheels for the insides of a ring. And I'll put that on the other side. Now just a reminder, every time we're using the buffing wheels, we always want to work between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock. This is going to be the most comfortable spot to work, where this is just gently tugging away from me. We're just going to load up a little bit of compound. You don't need to hold the compound under. You're going to hold your ring or your work firmly with 2 hands. Now if you notice your work is starting to get hot, have a little cup of water next to you. You can put wet work on the buffing wheel, it's okay. Okay, so that's the first step. I'm going to do the inside of the ring next.